Hey, what's going on, everybody? Manny here once again. Welcome back to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NFL and the NBA. Got a brand new video for you guys. We're going to discuss today's 7-game slate here in the association. But before I get started, ladies and gentlemen, like always, I appreciate you guys drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel and it's your first time here and you have not, as of yet, become a part of the DFS Zone community, the only thing you have to do is subscribe down below. That bell icon on the right-hand side. Make sure you click that and put that on so this way you don't miss out on any of my NFL or NBA lineup advice videos. With that being said, today is Saturday, November the 10th, 2018. We have a 7-game slate in the association, and I do have a stud 5, a couple value plays for you guys, and a couple budget plays as well. Nice little slate here today. Got a couple. We got first things first. Before doing the video, I just heard about an hour or so ago, Jimmy Butler traded. Finally, now Minnesota is probably going to get themselves to get that act together because they just didn't know where to go, especially Jimmy Butler putting himself in that position that he didn't want to play, wanted to take days off on back-to-backs. This obviously definitely helps Minnesota. They traded Jimmy Butler, if you haven't heard as of yet, Jimmy Butler over to Philadelphia for Mr. Covington and Mr. Sarge. Now, granted, Minnesota, to be honest with you, those are some two nice pieces there for Jimmy Butler that will definitely help their team. I can see Sarge really being something that can definitely help Minnesota, and I like the Covington move as well. So they are going to probably be, to me, in my opinion, I think they actually are a little bit better with Jimmy Butler gone, and opens up the door, obviously, for maybe Andrew Wiggins to move into that shooting guard spot. Who knows? I don't know how they're going to do it, but I guess Coach Thibodeau will figure that out. But the bottom line is that Jimmy Butler now comes to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia now has 3 monsters. You know what I mean? You got Ben Simmons, Jimmy B, and then you got yourself Embiid up front. They definitely are going to be very vulnerable. So nice trade. I think it helps both teams out. Obviously, it's going to definitely help both teams in the long run. Jimmy Butler definitely didn't want to be in Minnesota anymore, and now at least they get him out of there, and he can get now situated in Philadelphia. So it opens up the doors for a little bit today because Philadelphia is on the front end of a back-to-back, so they're going to be playing. And obviously there's no Covington, so I figure Wilson Chandler is probably going to move into the starting role, at least for now, or at least for tonight. Maybe a bump up on J.J. Redick as far as minutes are concerned and getting shots off. Obviously Embiid and Ben Simmons are going to have to get busy again. They're both young. They both played last night and put up massive games. I was all over Simmons last night. And sorry I didn't put up a video yesterday. I was just consumed very long day of work. Wasn't able to at all sit down and get anything done. By the time I really settled in, it was probably about 3:30, 4 o'clock. It would have been too late to put up a video. So I did not do it. But anyway, I'm here today. So let's get right to it. At point guard, obviously we have some injury news. We know Curry is not playing today. So obviously that opens up the door for Quinn Cook. He is definitely one of my plays for today. Obviously, some of these plays are going to be obvious. I like to try to mix it up a little bit, not try to give you a lot of obvious plays because, you know, we should know by now. If you are playing DFS and you are an NBA fan, you're going to at least have an idea of who is going to get a bump up, especially when someone is out on their team. So Steph Curry, obviously out, definitely bumps up Kevin Durant, and of course, Mr. Jordan Bell is probably going to get some more minutes as well. We'll get to that. But anyway, point guard today, I normally don't pay up for John Wall. John Wall's in a good spot. You know, Miami's definitely had their issues at point. I love John. I don't love John Wall as a player, so I'm not a big fan of his. But I'm not saying he's not a great player. I think he's in a good matchup here. I think you could pay up for him. He's going to need 50 for the 10K. I'm not willing to pay 50 just yet for him. He may just get 50. He did get 50 somewhat, I think, the first time around. Ben Simmons is coming out of on the front end of a back-to-back. I love Ben Simmons. I had him last night. Even when we were in the Slack chat, I told everybody I gave them the 4 or 5 plays that I really was favoring, even that late, just before lock. Ben Simmons was one of those guys, as well as Jokic, and they both did well. And Mr. Drummond was my other guy, and he did very well too. But Ben Simmons, man, you know, he's in play. Obviously in play. Memphis, my only concern is that Memphis is a pretty good defensive team all the way around. They basically are giving up only about 100 points a game to the opposition all year long. So they're pretty tough there, and then they have to go into Memphis. I love the Sixers when they're at home. I am going to go down to Chris Paul, man, today. I think his price at $8,200 really stands out to me. I mean, you only need 40, 41 from him, and he is more than capable of getting you 40 any given night. He's averaging 41 fantasy points right now, 16 points, 5 rebounds, pretty much almost 9 assists a game. At 8,200, you need, like I said, 40 or 41. And on DK, he's 7,600. You only need about 36, 37 fantasy points to meet value there, and that's very much attainable for him in a matchup like this. Last few games, and let's put it this way, Chris Paul is due. I mean, you're probably saying, why is Manny choosing Chris Paul? I normally don't pick Chris Paul a whole lot. If I'm going with Chris Paul, if I'm ever taking Chris Paul, it's because I feel that I can pay down and not pay for Harden. And it's pretty much the same thing, the same philosophy for me with Houston is pretty much the same with Washington. If I take Wall, I don't take Beal. If I take Beal, I take Wall. So I don't take Wall, in other words. And over here, same thing. If I take Chris Paul, I'm not going to be on Harden. But if I am on Harden, I'm not going to even consider Chris Paul. So at this price, you just got to take a stab at him. You just have to. It's a little bit too low. 8,200, again, like I said, and 7,600 on DK. So he's due, man. He's been training, he's obviously been trending downward, and we never don't want to go in with it, down on the trend, but he is due for a game to bust out on. I could see this game being one of them that he's able to get. He's still getting 35 plus minutes per game. He's at, we go over to the Fantasy Cruncher, and Mr. Chris Paul, as you can see, his usage rate is still pretty darn good. He's getting 21, 22, pretty much 20 to 22% usage rate on the floor. His problem as of late has been he's taking more than enough shots. He's just not burying them. And as you can see, in the last 3 games, he's taken only 11 or 12 shots from the floor per game. And look at the threes. 4, 6, and 3. He has not hit a 3 in 3 games. So he is more than due. I don't see this guy being in this position to be this bad with his shooting, with his field goal percentage and his three-point shooting for very long. It's just a matter of time for him to bounce back. And he's at a price level right now where he is considered fairly cheap, at least in my opinion. I mean, he's been as high as $9,000 thus far this season, and we know that he is pretty much a $9,000, or maybe pretty much up to almost $9,500 player per game. And he is right now at 8,200, so you got to take advantage of the discount. 8,200. I am all over Chris Paul here, man. So I think he's going to have a bounce-back game. It could be here today. I'm hoping it is. I'm taking a stab at him just for that reason. And, obviously the numbers don't look good as of late. But he is capable of getting about 11, maybe as much as 13, 14 shots per game. He's going to take some threes. It's just about the shots going down. If he can get that field goal percentage and that three-point percentage to, go in his favor, he'll be just fine. The other thing that disappoints me about him is he turns over the ball too much. But he is capable of rebounding as far as fantasy points. He makes that back up because of the steals. 6 steals in the last game, man. We'll take that. He just needs to start burying some shots. All right, so he at least was able to. He wasn't shooting that well. He still was able to go out there, get some assists, and get some steals and be able to get us some fantasy points. So I think he's due for 40 or better. He has 55-point upside. We all know that. So Chris Paul, for me, I think this is the game. The beauty of it is, as you can see with the steals here, 6, 1, and 4. That's 11 steals in the last 3 games. So even though he hasn't been shooting that well, he's at least trying to defend. He's trying to get something done, and I could definitely be willing to accept that. But at 8,200, if he can get me 35, that'll be below his value. No problem. I'll be willing to take a stab at that. But I'm willing because of the upside that he has. Definitely willing to take a shot at him today. He's going up against San Antonio. San Antonio's 10th in the league in defending guards, which is not too bad. They're in the top 10. But they have been allowing 30 fantasy points per game to point guards. 4 out of their last 5 games against point guards, they've been giving them 31 plus fantasy points per game. They gave 44 to Lillard, 42 to Drew Holiday, and 38 to Jeff Teague, probably the most popular point guards that they have faced. And now they got to deal with Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul has an excellent shot here, man, to definitely redeem himself, get himself back in that upward trend as far as fantasy points and helping his team out, the Houston Rockets. Other than that, for value here, man, obviously the value play of the day, I mean, Rondo is in play for me. I'm going to have some exposure to Rondo, especially if Lonzo Ball is out. We haven't gotten any news yet. I also like Dinwiddie. I had him last night, and he came through with a nice game here, 5,400. It is the front end of a back-to-back for him. But I do like him here against the Golden State Warriors without no Steph Curry. So Spencer Dinwiddie is definitely in play for me as well. I'm just throwing a couple of guys other there. Obviously, with Dragic still out, Tyler Johnson is still a viable play at 4,800. I do like Mr. Sexton here against Chicago at 4,400, but I'm going to come down to Quinn Cook, and obviously he's probably going to be a little chalky because we all know that he's going to get a bump in minutes. He played 18 minutes after Curry went down, in the last game pretty much, and 15 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, 21 pretty much in both games that he has played. So he's done 1 fantasy point per minute or better in both of those matchups. With no Steph, he's definitely going to see about, I would think he's going to get 30, 35. And when he played last year for Curry, he was averaging 32 fantasy points per game on average, and his usage rate was definitely over the roof. He can score as well, and he can also shoot the 3. And he has, those moments where he can get you at least some rebounds and assists as well. But we expect him to get a lot of opportunities to shoot the ball today, as well as Kevin Durant and Clay. So you got to definitely think this is the Clay, Kevin Durant, and of course Quinn Cook as the third option. Do not fall asleep on Jordan Bell. We're going to have some exposure to him as well. I'm talking about him when we get to center. But going up against Brooklyn, they have allowed 23. They're 23rd in defending point guards this season, allowing 33.6 fantasy points per game. They did give up 66 to Paul, 48 to Curry, 46 to Ben Simmons. And then some lower tier players. Reggie Jackson put up 34 against them, and Frank Ntilikina of the New York Knicks put up 31. So there is definitely some room there for at least Mr. Cook to get 25 to 30. And at that price, $4,400 for Mr. Cook. Like I said, 22 pretty much you need from him there. At DK, he's 4,200, folks. So he's viable. He's definitely available. Definitely good in both platforms. You need 21 to 22 total. I think he's going to be able to smash that. We go to shooting guard. Shooting guard, like I said, if I'm on Paul, I normally don't go Harden. I'm not on James Harden tonight. I do like DeMar DeRozan. I've been on him several times this year, and all the times he has definitely come through for me. I think no different here today. Big game against Houston, Battle of Texas. I see DD being able to get his regular stats here. I can see him getting 50 or better. 26 points per game thus far this year, 6 rebounds, pretty much 7 assists, 46.7 fantasy points. Pretty much you could say that's 47 fantasy points per game. At 9,600, you need about 48. And on DK, he's 9,004. You need about 47. So 47 to 48 is very much attainable for him. That's pretty much in his ballpark. He just finished coming off a 52 fantasy point game where he had a double-double, nearly had a triple-double. Did put in a block and 2 steals. He's capable of filling up the stat sheet. We all know that. He's a pretty good defender. He can shoot. He's starting to get the threes down when he takes those. He is becoming really, really good. Last year he was showing those signs, especially with the three-point shooting. But this year he has been fantastic for this team. He definitely needed to move. Let's go over here to the Fantasy Cruncher and examine him a little bit more. And as we look here, as you can see, the minutes are there, 33 plus minutes over the last 3 games. The usage rate is, through the roof, as much as 29% or 30% at a time, but more or less about maybe 25 to 26% on a regular basis. 42 plus in the last 2 games, as you can see that here. And as 17 he pretty much takes. If you calculate these last few, maybe about 18 shots per game on average, 18 shots per game. Doesn't take a whole lot of threes, but when he does take some and he hits them, he'll normally take a few more. So you figure 2 to 3 threes a game. We don't expect him to do a whole lot of those. He's definitely a good free throw shooter. He definitely gets to the line. And then he brings in, of course, everything else, some rebounding, some assists, and he's capable of getting steals and blocks. And, of course, he scores from the floor. So, I mean, he is just pretty much a 5-tool player for this team. Last year versus this team, Houston, he did put up 31 and 47. We'll take a look at that real quickly here. He did put 31 and 47, 41 and 31 last year. And then the prior year, 45 and 46. Houston's coming in here 25th in defending shooting guards and allowing 29.7 fantasy points per game. They did give up 34 to Oladipo, 47.8, nearly 48 fantasy points to Mr. LeVert of the Nets. And Mr. Mitchell put up 51, and Mr. Payton put up 39. So there is definitely room here for DeMar DeRozan, DD, to put up 50 or better. I definitely love the matchup. I definitely love DeMar DeRozan here today in this game. So he is my stud shooting guard. When I'm looking at value, it was tough, man. There's a couple guys down here that are pretty interesting. LeVert going into Golden State, obviously, is a nice possibility there. I just think his price is still a little high. Doncic against OKC, maybe Buddy Hield just coming out of a back-to-back is in the front end of a back-to-back. But I'm going to go all the way down to Dennis Schroder. I mean, you got to take advantage of the fact Russell Wilson. I keep always confusing Russell Wilson with Russell Westbrook. Westbrook's still out, so Dennis Schroder is definitely still in play, man. He's getting the minutes the last 2 games, 33-plus minutes. He has 40-point upsides. He got a 40 spot 2 games ago. 4 out of his last 5 games, he has had 30 or better, which is fantastic. His usage rate, let's get over here real quickly, and let's go to Mr. Schroder. And his usage rate has been freaking through the roof, man. 25 or better over the last 3 games. He had 32 and 32% the 2 games prior to that, taking massive shots. He's taking maybe about 14, I would say 14 to 15 shots on average per game. Gets a couple of threes out. Didn't hit any threes in the last 2 games. I'm not concerned there. What I like to see him is get to the foul line, and I like to see him also be able to, get in the driving lanes and be aggressive so he can get on the foul line, but also the rebound and assist, and he's been doing that. A lot of turnovers in the last game. He doesn't normally cough up 6 turnovers a game, but if he can get some steals and continue to do that, he's been doing at least 1 steal a game for 5 straight games. So I like Dennis Schroder. He has to step up. Between him and Paul George, they got to get it done, and Mr. Steven Adams up front against his team today when they battle the Dallas Mavericks. Let's see how he did against Dallas last year, man. He was fantastic when he was with the Atlanta Hawks. He was 48 and 44, so pretty much about a 46 average fantasy points against his team last year. And the team is pretty much still the same, other than there's no Carmelo Anthony, and that would not be someone that he has to concern himself with. He did very well last year. Dallas coming in here, 19th in defending shooting guards, allowing 37 fantasy points per game. If you've been here long enough, I've been attacking Dallas, especially Washington in some areas. It's just really, really bad in some spots, and they definitely have had the issues with point guards thus far this year. That's the 4th most fantasy points per game given up to guards this year in the NBA. They did give up 44 to Mitchell, 39 to Beal, 61 to DeRozan, 54 to Bazemore, and 44 to Mr. Zach LaVine. So, I mean, I just think this is it, man. This is a good spot for Dennis Schroder. So I like Dennis Schroder as possibly, it's not so much of a value play because he is pretty expensive, but I think he could definitely be value here. I really don't like a whole lot of the guys down here. Now, if you're thinking anybody down here, like I said, with the trade of Saric and Covington, you could probably expect maybe a little bit of a bump in minutes for J.J. Redick, at least for today's game. And maybe the same for Marco Fultz. It's entirely up to you which way you want to go. Keep your eye on Josh Hart, 4,600. I think he's still a little cheap with a good upside. Mr. Wayne Ellington as well, 3,900 as a budget play. Could be definitely a nice little play there. And I also like they're starting to give a little bit of minutes to Bogdan Bogdanovic. So maybe BB may get some more minutes today as well. So he might be someone to consider as well as a possible budget play. All right, let's go to small forward. A small forward, the obviouses are James is in a good spot as always. He's LeBron James. Kevin Durant is definitely in play for me. I'm going to have exposure to him possibly in half of my lineups. Why wouldn't you? Again, this is where I say to myself, there's no need for me to go over Kevin Durant. We know he's a viable play. Let me just close this out. Viable play in this matchup today. He's going to have to be the stud. Him and Clay, as well as Quinn Cook, maybe even Jordan Bell, got to step up. There is no Draymond Green and there's no Steph Curry. So that, as DFS players, we all know that. So we know he's going to probably be a little more chalky. And that's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to speak about him, because I know that you guys out there know that he is in a good position to be in someone's lineup. I'm going to come down to Paul George. He is $800 cheaper, and I think he's going to be the least likely owned. I think the KD is going to be the one that's going to be highly owned in his matchup today. But Paul George is in the same good situation, so either or, you can go either or. I'm going to have exposure to both, to be totally honest with you. But George, no Russell Westbrook. Obviously, you got to consider Paul George. He's coming in here 35 minutes plus in the last few games. He's averaging 22 points, 7.1 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 44.5 fantasy points per game. At 10.4, you need about 52. And on DK, he's at 9,200. You need 46. Obviously, slightly just a bit above his average, but he is more than capable of getting you 50 or better any given night. He is capable of getting you a double-double, and he's capable of getting all the additional steals and sometimes blocks that we like to see from these players in the NBA. 35, 38, so like I said, 35-plus minutes over the last few games. He is in a slight little uptrend. He's had 2 out of his last 3 games at 53 or better. Okay, he has had 3 double-doubles, and he's had a double-double. He's just coming off a double-double the other night. but he's had 3 so far this year. He's average. Let's go over here to the cruncher, the fantasy cruncher, and Paul George. I mean, usage rate is there, man. We know he's going to get shot. He pretty much averages 23 to 24% when there's no when there is Mr. Westbrook. But as you can see, 32 in the last game. Definitely, we're counting on him. He had an off night though, 3 of 11 from 3 and 7 of 21. But he just did everything else: rebounding, assists, steals. Look at this, 6 of them. He's had 8, 12, 14. Man, he's had about maybe 18 steals over the last 5 or 6 games. This is what he brings to the table, man. This is what makes him so appealing. So 23 to 24% usage rate. He's taking massive shots, probably about 16, 17, or maybe anywhere between 15 and 16 per game. And he's going to take some threes. You figure about maybe 6 or 7 threes per game. He gets to the foul line, and then he brings everything else. He's that kind of player, the rebounds, the assists, and, of course, he's capable of defending and getting those steals. So Paul George, yeah, definitely in a very, very good spot here. He fills up the stat sheet very well. Going up against Dallas, last year against Dallas, he had 2 pretty good games. He had a 42 spot in one game, 57 in another. I don't see no different today. Dallas is coming in 28th in defending small forwards this year and allowing 31.4 fantasy points per game. They gave up 45 to Mr. Porter of Washington. LeBron James put up 50 against them. Kawhi Leonard put up 51. So obviously there is some room here for PG-13 to get busy today. So I definitely like some PG-13 today. I'm going to have some exposure to him. I think he's the stud small forward of the day. As far as value, man, I didn't like a whole lot of guys down there. You could go with Winslow. I'm going to go with Mr. Barnes. He doesn't give you a whole lot of upside. He's more of a good cash play. I've said it here before. If you guys were with me when I started the channel 7 months ago, I pretty much always, every time I spoke about Barnes, was more so about him being a cash play. He still is a good cash play even for today, for you cash play players. But he has a little bit of upside. I think he's in a good spot here. Also, he's had good history. That's one of the reasons why I chose him, because I was looking at the stats and I noticed that he did fairly well against his team last year. So Harrison Barnes in play, 15 points, 5 rebounds, pretty much 1.5 assists a game, 25 fantasy points, 5,300, you need 26, and he's also 5,300 on DK. So you need 25, 26 from him. Pretty much can get it done. There's no doubt about it. He's averaging 25 right now. He did have 15 in his last game in 35 minutes. Obviously, Utah is a tough, defense there for him. But 43 the prior game against Washington. He's had 4 solid games. Pretty much. Well, let's go to the usage rate. Let's check out his usage rate. Mr. Barnes. And you know what I like? Look at this usage rate. 23, 24, 23, 27. He's pretty much in the last 4 games 23 or better percent. So he's getting opportunities, he's just not burying the shots more consistently. If he can get this field goal percentage to get just slightly a little bit better, maybe closer to 50%, he's going to generate us more fantasy points. Plus, he takes about 5 or 6 threes a game. He needs to bury at least 50 or more percent of those as well. He can get to the line. He's a pretty good free throw shooter. And then he brings a couple of little things like that. He does have those moments where he can get a couple of steals. He defends a little bit. All right? He can rebound a little bit. He can give you a couple of assists. He needs to be able to do all of that and then some. So, I like him here. I think he has the potential to get you 30 or better. He has had good history. Last year in 4 games, he pretty much averaged more than 30 fantasy points per game in every one of his matchups. He had a 31 spot here, 33 here, 35, and then a 40 spot in the last game in an overtime game. So that, granted, he got 40 because of overtime. Nonetheless, in those 4 games, look at this, the scoring. He's a scorer, and he got 12 to maybe 13 shots or 14 shots per game in those 4 games against his team. So I like the whole idea of him going up against OKC. They're 8th in defending small forwards. They are allowing 23.5 fantasy points per game. It's not a whole lot, but they did give up 29 to Batum, 33 to Tatum, 48 to Iman Shumpert, and 47 to Tobias Harris. Obviously, Mr. Harris is probably the most popular and more of a top tier small forward out of those 4 I mentioned, but nonetheless, we don't expect him to be in that position to do a Tobias Harris. We want him to get 30 to 35, and I think he has an opportunity and is capable of getting that done for us today. Other than that, if you're looking at anybody else, like I did mention, Justice Winslow may be someone to consider. I may have him in a few lineups, sprinkle him in. They are at home. Miami is tough, and they're playing against Washington, who struggles in every position with everybody. So you got to at least have a little exposure to Winslow. His price is a little up. You need about 29 at 5,900, but hey, I think he's capable of getting you 30 to 35 easy, and he has 40-point upside. So definitely Mr. JW may be someone to consider. And that's pretty much it for me there. Well, in matter of fact, as far as a budget play, you got to consider with the trade of Dario Saric and Robert Covington, you got to have some exposure to Mr. Wilson Chandler. Wilson Chandler, I would think, is going to get the bump and is going to probably start today. I mean, he played 15 minutes in his last 2 outings. We know with his history at Denver that he's capable of exploding any given night. He's a pretty decent player inside, around the basket, as well as from the perimeter. He can shoot from the perimeter. He shoots threes. So he has definite upside. For 3,500, you only need 15, and he's also 3,400 on DK. Pretty much 14, 15 points. That's all you need. If he's going to get 15 minutes or better, I think he'll get 20 or better today if he starts. And I would not be surprised if he gets 25, 30. If he gets 25, 30, he can get us 20 to 25, maybe even 30. He could probably get a 6X on this price. So he is definitely someone of a budget play today who is probably going to be in a favorable position as far as playing more than enough minutes, because we want him to come in at this price and get minutes. So if he does get 20 to 25 minutes, I think that's not a bad play to play him at 3,500. So Wilson Chandler is someone that I am looking at. Let's go to power forward. At power forward, I'm going with the youngsters today. I'm going to go with Wendell Carter Jr. in this matchup against Cleveland. We know Cleveland is pretty bad. We just hope that they stay here long enough, or at least close enough, to make this interesting for 3.5 quarters. If they could do that, it's going to definitely open the doors for Wendell Carter to have an awesome day. 7,600. You need about 37 for that price. And on DK, he's 6,300. I love his price on DK. So I'm definitely playing some DK today just to get him in the lineup. 6,300 on DK, you need about 31. He's averaging 31 right now. And when you look at his game log, he's been at 27 to 29 minutes pretty much per game over the last 4 or 5 games. 31 plus fantasy points per game in 8 straight games. 31 plus. That's his average. So that means he's trending upward, which I like to see. 2 40-plus games and 1 50-point game thus far this year. So he has 50-point upside. He has had 3 double-doubles in a row, 17 and 11, 11 and 13, and 14 and 13. He's been solid, and he has a total of 4 of them altogether for the year. And he can get you the extra points as well. As you can see, look at this blocks here. This kid defends 5, 9, 10, 13. 13 blocks over the last 5-6 games. That's pretty darn good, man. I haven't been on him this year because his price is a little high. I think his price right now at this moment, I can live with this 7,600 because there's not a lot I love here at power forward tonight. Obviously, with all the injuries around, LaMarcus Aldridge could be a viable play. I'm just willing to pay down a little bit so I can pay up in some of the other areas that I like. But here, you know, with 3 steals and 5-6 blocks, or with almost 10 blocks in the last 4 or 5 games, I definitely love the opportunity to play Mr. Wendell Carter Jr. His usage rate, it's not overwhelming, but I can see here in between here in the last like maybe 5-6 games back, he was averaging about 22-23% per game. So I think they're going to get back to that. He's getting about 9-10 shots per game. And, of course, he's able to get to the line. He's been pretty darn good there, as you can see. 6 of 6, 4 of 4, 2 of 3. The rebounds are there. Not a big assist guy, but he can get those. And what I like is, obviously, the defense, man. 5, 9, 10, 13 blocks over the last 5 games. He's got to watch the foul trouble. He does get into foul trouble. That is an issue. If he can stay away from that, he'll definitely help himself out. He'll help us out as fantasy players. And, of course, he'll help his team. So Wendell Carter Jr. is someone I'm considering going up against Cleveland. 13th in defense against small forwards, which is not considered bad at all, allowing 24 fantasy points per game. But all these were defended. Everybody that they played against was defended by Osman, who right now is out and is hurt. The only 2 notable players that they have faced that did put up some nice numbers against them was Aaron Gordon put up 37 and Blake Griffin put up 42. So I think this kid is capable of getting us, that 35-40. I think he can get 40 or better, but we need Cleveland to be a little bit close. If they're able to do that, I think they'll be just fine. Other than him, I'm willing to go with the other rookie and go with Mr. Jaren Jackson Jr. 6,300 for Memphis. Philadelphia depleted, obviously, with no Covington tonight, as well as no Saric. I definitely like Jackson Jr.'s opportunity here. And, I mean, the last 2 games, 32-plus minutes, he's averaging 12 points, 4.5 rebounds, pretty much 5 rebounds a game, and about 1.5 assists. 26 fantasy points per game at 6,300. You need 31, and he's 5,200. Love his price on DK, 5,200. You need 26 there. So very much capable of doing it because he already is averaging 26, and he's averaging more than 26. He's on an upward trend here, 38 2 games ago and 43 in the last game. Putting up 15 to 20 floor points and playing 32 minutes. I think Mr. JJ is now in position to really be able to take over this power forward spot for the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are playing really good as a team as well as defensively. So definitely a good opportunity for him. His minutes are up. Like I said, usage rate, let's go over here to the cruncher. And his usage rate has been absolutely through the roof. 30 and 30 over the last 2 games. Look at the shots, 15 to 16 on average. Putting up 7 of 15 and 6 of 16. A little bit more better field goal percentage there. He'll put himself in a position to put 45, maybe 46 fantasy points per game if he could take that many shots and put them down. And, he shoot the 3. He was 2 of 5 in the last game, 0 for 3 in the prior game. Could get to the foul line. He's not a bad free throw shooter, and he brings everything else. He gets some rebounds. He'll do a couple assists. Turnovers he's got to clean up, but 3 steals. Look at the blocks, 8 in the last 2 games and 10 over the last 4 games. If you continue to do that, those are the things that I look for after a few games. I want to see these young kids. I want to see players do that, especially big men. Give me some fantasy points to build on. Blocks, steals, get those rebounds for your team. Bring up those fantasy point totals up for us, and then I'll be more than happy. I don't want somebody who's just dependent on them just scoring the ball. We want them to be able to do all those little other things, what I call dirty, being a little dirty. Get all that dirty work in there. They're going up against Philly. They're 16th in defense. Thus far against power forwards this year, they're allowing a whopping 36.6 fantasy points per game, even though they're 16th. They have given up 77 and 61 in 2 games to Blake Griffin, which is crazy. Mr. Siakam put up 42 and 78 by Giannis. That is crazy. And with no Saric today because of the trade, definitely like Mr. JJ here. Definitely like Mr. JJ here. Now, granted, there are a couple other plays you consider. I mean, Jaren Grant is in play. Obviously, Saric is not in play. Larry Nance Jr. again here. I don't know why his minutes are down. I mean, this guy should be playing 25, 30 minutes a game. I don't know what they're doing in Cleveland at the moment, but he could be possibly someone to consider. Hollis Jefferson obviously is still too cheap. We're waiting for him to get himself going. Obviously, he came back from an injury, so we're waiting to see. I'm waiting to see a little bit to see if he can get himself to the point where he's putting up 25, 30, 35 fantasy points per game, at least for 2 or 3 games. Then maybe I'll be a little bit more on him because his price is very cheap right now. But you can take a GPP stab at him. Mr. Markieff Morris, definitely someone to consider as well. I'll probably have my eye on him as well. And then down here, you got to consider, Olenek here against Washington. Washington has been suffering in every possible position defensively. You could consider, Olenek here as well. So keep an eye on him. And if I've mentioned it before, I will mention it again. Ed Davis coming off the bench for Brooklyn has been pretty darn good too. If he can get 20 plus minutes, I could see him being able to put 1 fantasy point per minute. So he could be a nice little low budget play here as well. Let's go over to center. At center, Joel Embiid. Hey, man, when is he not in play? But the thing is, Memphis is a little concerning. He's coming off a back-to-back. He had a monster game last night. He played massive minutes. I'm willing to fade him today, just to save the money. So Mr. Whiteside is definitely someone I would consider. I will have some exposure to Mr. Whiteside. His blocking ability, his rebounding skills definitely are something that I always want to be able to have in a lineup. 9,300 is not too bad. You pretty much need 46, 47 from him. He's at 43. Not a bad position. The only thing is that, he is going to have to deal with Dwight Howard, who's not a terrible defender. He's not the greatest, but he's not terrible. Marc Gasol could be someone to consider going up against Embiid. I don't think so today. Gasol, that's going to be trouble for Embiid because Gasol is a pretty good defender, as well as the whole Memphis team. So a little concern there. I'm going to come all the way down to Steven Adams for the first time this year. I think him going up against DeAndre Jordan, and then them knowing that they definitely need him in the front court to get busy. Him, PG-13, and Dennis Schroder, you got to have the big games for OKC to be able to pull this game out. So I could see Steven Adams getting a lot of opportunities down low. Steven Adams, 7,800, you need 38. Pretty much here on FanDuel. On DK, you need 6,400. You only need 32 to meet value there. I think that is very much attainable. I love his price on DK. He will be in my lineup on DK for certain. 32, 34, 36, 32 or better over the last 3 games. He's averaging 14 points, 10 rebounds, nearly a double-double pretty much every time he's on the floor. 35.6 fantasy points, like I said. So you need about 38 here on FanDuel. I think he can get it. Just like I said, I love his price more on DK, knowing that he's got to get at least 32, which I know he's got 50-point upside. So he is definitely someone to consider for sure. Just came off, like I said, a double-double here. Has had 5 double-doubles thus far this year. He's 37-plus in 2 straight games, as you can see here, 37 and 39. He has crushed that 36 pretty much in the last 2 games, so he's in a slight little uptrend. Has 45, 50-point upside. We've seen him get 50 or more last year a few times. We come over here and we look at him a little bit closer. And, usage rate is not going to be huge because he's a big man. He just basically gets the putbacks, all the little easy baskets underneath, 14, 16. So he's pretty much about a 16, 17% usage rate guy. He's going to get anywhere between 9, maybe 10 opportunities per game on average. And then, of course, get to the foul line, which he's able to do a few times a game. But the most important thing from him is rebounding and defense. If he can get me some rebounds and score all those easy baskets underneath the boards and be able to get some blocks and steals, I'll be happy. And he's able to do that. And he doesn't get into foul trouble a whole lot. I mean, he's a very physical guy, and he's still, look as you see, last 3 games, 2, 2, and 2, just 6 personal fouls. And he's capable of getting you double digits, 19, 18, and 15 over the last 3 out of the last 4 games. Definitely love it. He hasn't played well against Dallas in his career. Last season, 25, 19, and 6. I'm not going to base it on that because Dallas has looked pitiful this year as far as defending centers. As you can see, they're 28th right now in defending centers thus far this year, and they are allowing 38.5 fantasy points per game to centers. So I'm loving all of that. 4 out of the last 5 games against centers, they have put up 57 and 47. Gobert put up 57 and 47 in 2 games. Mitchell Robinson of the Knicks, the rookie, put up 41. McGee put up 53. And Karl Anthony Towns put up 46. So Steven Adams, he should at least be able to meet value. 35 to 40, easy for DK, needing 32. Love it there. And he has the potential to definitely smash value also for FanDuel. At 38 fantasy points he needs, I think he can get 40 or better. I definitely love a little Steven Adams today, especially considering there is no Westbrook. All right. As far as value, I'm going to come all the way down to a team that obviously is going to need some help. And where is he? Jordan Bell, which I mentioned very early at the beginning of the video. JB is in play for me. Look, numbers are not going to be great because he's been choppy with minutes and choppy with time on the floor, but he's going to get a bump in minutes. He's going to get some play time. I hope that he gets more than 21. He's had 21 over the last 2 games, but I would love to see him get 25, maybe 28. And he has the potential to definitely get us that. For 4,200, you need about 21. So you need about 21 minutes at least. I mentioned this before. I look at that. You got to look at those numbers. You say 42, 4,200. Is he getting me 20 minutes, 21 minutes on the floor? Well, if he's not doing that, then you got to hope that he is doing a whole lot. He's putting in more than 1.1 fantasy points per minute. Then maybe you may consider him. But at this point, I'm looking at, first thing is he getting 20, 21 minutes? And then I look to see if he's giving me 1 fantasy point per minute and if he has upside to give me more. So with the minimal minutes he's had here, obviously I had to look back at where he was at last year. And there were times last year when he did play more than 20, 25 minutes. He did get 23, as you can see here. Let's get to a point. You see here, played 22 in this game, got 28 fantasy points. This game here, 27 minutes, got 31. So he has potential to get you 30 if he gets 25 minutes or better. So I'm banking and I'm hoping that he's going to be on the floor for more than 20, 25 minutes there and get me more than 1 fantasy point per minute. He's going up against Brooklyn. Brooklyn is 25th in defending centers. They're allowing 36 fantasy points per game, so we always like to pick on Brooklyn because of that. They gave up 69 to Jokic, 57 to Capella, 58 to Drummond. 51 to Capella, not 57, and 58 to Drummond. Those are the 3 most notable centers that they have played that have put up big numbers. So I can see him he can easily get 30 if he get 25 to 28 minutes. So it's all based on that. I think he will. So I like Mr. Jordan Bell, and that's pretty much it. As far as value down here, I really don't like anybody like really of a budget play. I just don't. So I'm not going to give one if there isn't. Again, Comment down below. We'll go back and forth. We discuss it. Remember, I'm on Slack. I'm also on Twitter. I've been very inactive with Twitter. I got to get more involved with that. It's just so busy. I'm a one-man show. It's so much to do on my own. But commenting here on the video, I've been able to interact with a lot of us in the community quite well on here, right on YouTube, on the video description area as far as comments are concerned. And because I started a little Slack group, we've been able to have 25, I think 22, 23 people are pretty much involved there, and we're interacting there and we're discussing the slate prior to lock. So just be on the lookout. The invitation is there if you haven't done it already. Of course, you can always hit me up on Twitter. I'll be more than happy to discuss cash plays or any GPP plays. But these are the guys that I'm favoring right now, man. So again, I wish you guys a lot of luck, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.